My cabin, my rules. Lynn Carver's icy command slices through the tense cabin of Transglobal Flight 892, her pale face glaring at Nia Adebayo, a fierce black mom clutching her child in a silver case. At 35,000 feet, Nia's eyes blaze with unyielding defiance, guarding her daughter Amara's 50 millimeters life-saving drug. Amara's trembling hand sketches Starfire's fiery wings as the plane's hum fuels a brewing storm. What desperate strength drives Nia to challenge Lynn's cruel, rigid act? Can one mother's cry shatter a multi-million-dollar trial and spark a viral fire? Prejudice looms, tensions flare. Will Nia's courage ignite justice in the skies? Subscribe for epic tales of triumph. Share your city in the comments and join us. Can a single stand halt a plane and ruin a career? Stay tuned to unravel the explosive truth of this high-stakes clash. The low hum of Transglobal Flight 892's engines vibrated through the dim cabin, a relentless drone that clawed at Nia Adebayo's nerves. At 35,000 feet, the world outside the small oval window was a void of black, pierced only by the faint flicker of wingtip lights. Nia, a 38-year-old black mother, sat rigid in seat 2A, her fingers tracing the cool metal of a silver thermal case. Inside lay a single syringe of Neurovita 9, a $50 million experimental drug, the only shield between her daughter Amara and the merciless grip of Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. Her dark eyes, sharp with purpose, darted to her watch. 20 minutes until Amara's next dose. Every tick was a pulse of dread. She glanced at her 9-year-old daughter, Amara, whose small frame curled into the window seat, her pencil scratching furiously across a sketch pad. Amara's hero, Starfire, took shape in vibrant strokes, a warrior defying the darkness. Nia's heart tightened. She saw the faint tremor in Amara's hand, a cruel reminder of the monster lurking within her child's fragile body. Across the aisle, Greg Tanner, a middle-aged businessman in a crisp suit, adjusted his cufflinks, his gaze flicking toward Nia with a subtle sneer. His eyes lingered on the thermal case, then on her, as if her presence in first class was an anomaly to be questioned. Nia felt the sting of his stare, a familiar weight she'd carried through years of navigating spaces not built for her. She straightened, her jaw set, refusing to shrink. "You okay, baby?" she whispered, brushing Amara's braids. Amara nodded, her wide eyes bright but shadowed, and said, "Starfire's fighting the storm, Mama." Nia forced a smile, though her gut churned with unease. She knew storms, both the ones in Amara's brain and the ones brewing in the glances of strangers. The cabin's recycled air felt thick, pressing against her chest, as if the plane itself sensed the reckoning to come. Lynn Carver, the senior flight attendant, moved down the aisle with mechanical precision, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her lips a thin line of authority. Her eyes, cold and unyielding, scanned the rows like a predator sizing up prey. When they landed on Nia's thermal case, tucked in the seat pocket, a flicker of suspicion crossed her face. Nia caught the look, her pulse quickening. She'd seen that expression before, on nurses who doubted her expertise, on bureaucrats who questioned her paperwork. Lynn's gaze wasn't just professional, it was personal, laced with a rigid disdain that made Nia's skin prickle. She clutched the case tighter, her fingers trembling with defiant resolve. "Stay focused," she told herself, picturing the UCLA trial that awaited them, the last hope for Amara's future. But the air crackled with tension, as if the cabin knew a clash was imminent. Malik Jones, a 30-year-old tech entrepreneur in a sleek blazer, lounged in seat 1B, his phone propped up, live streaming to his 50,000 followers on X. His easy smile masked a sharp awareness, his eyes catching Nia's quiet strength as she murmured to Amara. "This mom's got fire," he typed, tilting his phone to frame Nia and the thermal case. His followers responded instantly, comments flooding. "What's in that case?" "She looks intense." Malek sensed a story, his instincts honed from years of spotting viral moments. He leaned back, his thumb hovering over the record button, ready for whatever unfolded. Nia, unaware of his attention, felt the cabin's eyes closing in, Greg's judgment, Lynn's scrutiny, the hum of the plane like a countdown. She whispered to Amara, "We're almost there, baby. Starfire's got this." But her heart pounded. sensing the storm was no longer just in Amara's sketch. Lynn paused at row 2, her voice cutting through the cabin's hum. "Ma'am, what's in that case?" she asked, her tone sharp, accusing, as if Nia were smuggling contraband. Nia's breath caught, but she kept her voice steady. "It's my daughter's medication, for a clinical trial. I have all the papers." Lynn's eyes narrowed, her hand twitching as if itching to seize the case. "All liquids must be declared," she snapped, her words dripping with authority. Nia's mind raced. She'd cleared TSA, had every document on her phone, yet Lynn's glare screamed disbelief. She saw Amara's hand shake harder, the pencil slipping. "It's okay, baby," Nia said, her voice firm, though fear clawed at her chest. She met Lynn's stare, unyielding, her defiance a shield against the attendant's scorn. The cabin seemed to shrink, the air heavy with the weight of an impending clash. Greg leaned forward, his voice low but audible. "Some people think they can bend the rules," he muttered to his seatmate, his eyes flicking to Nia. The words hit like a slap, but Nia didn't flinch. She'd faced worse. Doctors dismissing her, systems ignoring her pleas. Her mind flashed to the months of fighting for Amara's trial spot, the sleepless nights, the endless forms. She wouldn't let this man, or Lynn, unravel her purpose. "Ignore him," she told herself, focusing on Amara's sketch, the bold lines of Starfire's cape. But the tension was a living thing now, coiling tighter with each second. Malik's phone stayed trained on Nia, his live stream comments exploding. "This is getting wild." Nia felt the pressure mounting, her resolve hardening. She was a mother, a warrior, and no one, not Lynn, not Greg, would steal Amara's chance. The overhead lights flickered, casting stark shadows across the cabin. Nia's watch beeped softly. 15 minutes until Amara's dose. Her heart thudded, each tick a hammer against her resolve. She opened the thermal case, checking the syringe's icy vial, its clear liquid glinting like a fragile hope. Lynn's shadow loomed closer, her footsteps deliberate. "Ma'am, I need to see that now," Lynn said, her voice a blade cutting through Nia's focus. Nia's fingers tightened around the case, her mind screaming, "She doesn't understand. She can't take this." Amara looked up, her eyes wide with fear, sensing the storm breaking. Nia's defiance surged, a fierce fire against Lynn's cold authority. "This is my daughter's life," she said, her voice low, unyielding, a warning. The cabin held its breath, the hum of the engines a prelude to a reckoning. The hum of Transglobal Flight 892's engines pulsed like a heartbeat, each thrum tightening the knot in Nia Adebayo's chest. The cabin's dim lights cast long shadows, flickering across the silver thermal case she clutched in seat 2A. Inside, the Neurovita 9 syringe gleamed, a fragile lifeline for her daughter Amara, whose Lennox-Gastaut syndrome waited like a predator. Nia's eyes, fierce with purpose, flicked to her watch. 15 minutes until Amara's dose. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from a defiant resolve forged through years of battling for her child. Amara, curled in the window seat, sketched her hero Starfire, her small hands shaking as she drew fiery wings. Nia's heart ached, seeing the tremor worsen, a silent storm brewing in her daughter's fragile frame. She leaned close, whispering, "Starfire's unstoppable, baby," though her voice cracked with dread. The cabin air felt heavy, as if it carried the weight of an unseen reckoning. Lynn Carver, the senior flight attendant, glided down the aisle, her movements sharp and deliberate, like a blade slicing through the cabin's tension. Her blonde bun was a crown of control, her eyes cold and unyielding, scanning for any breach of her rigid order. When her gaze locked on Nia's thermal case, a spark of suspicion ignited, her lips tightening into a thin line. Nia felt the scrutiny, a familiar sting that burned deeper than the plane's chill. She'd faced it before, doctors dismissing her, officials questioning her credentials. But Lynn's stare was a storm of its own, laced with an unspoken challenge. Nia's grip on the case tightened, her mind racing. She sees a threat, not a mother. She glanced at Amara, whose pencil faltered, and murmured, "Keep drawing, baby." But Lynn's shadow loomed closer, her presence a warning that the battle was about to begin. Across the aisle, Greg Tanner's cufflinks glinted as he shifted in his seat, his eyes darting to Naya with a sneer that spoke volumes. He muttered to his seatmate, "Some people think they're above the rules," his voice low but sharp, cutting through the cabin's hum. Nia's jaw clenched, her defiance flaring against his judgment. She wouldn't shrink. Not here, not now, not with Amara's life at stake. Her mind flashed to the months of fighting for the UCLA trial, the endless nights proving her worth. He doesn't know me, she thought, her gaze steady, unyielding. Malik Jones in seat 1B caught the exchange, his phone subtly angled, live streaming to his ex-followers. "This mom's a warrior," he typed, his dark eyes sharp with curiosity. His comments buzzed. "What's with the case?" "This feels big." Malik sensed a story, his thumb poised, ready to capture the storm. Lynn stopped at row 2, her voice slicing through the air. "Ma'am, I need to inspect that case," she said, her tone a command, not a request, as if Naya were a problem to be contained. Nia's heart thudded, but she kept her voice even. "It's my daughter's medication for a clinical trial. I have documentation." Lynn's eyes narrowed, her hand hovering, itching to seize the case. "All liquids must be in clear bags," declared, she snapped, her words dripping with authority, her posture rigid. Nia's mind screamed, "She's not listening." She reached for her phone, fingers trembling, to show the trial papers, but Lynn cut her off. "That's not how this works," Lynn said, her voice colder, sharper. Amara's hand shook harder, her pencil dropping, her wide eyes darting between her mother and the towering attendant. Nia's defiance surged, a fierce fire against Lynn's icy control. The cabin seemed to shrink, the air thick with tension, as passengers turned, their whispers a rising tide. Greg leaned forward, his voice louder now. "Just follow the rules and we can all move on," he said, his tone smug, as if Nia's resistance were a personal offense. Nia's chest tightened, but she wouldn't break. He doesn't get it, she thought, her eyes locked on Amara, who clutched her sketch pad like a shield. Malik's phone stayed steady, his live stream comments exploding. "This attendant's out of line." "Protect that kid." Nia felt the weight of their stares. Greg's scorn, Lynn's suspicion, the cabin's growing unrest. She opened the thermal case, revealing the syringe, its clear liquid glinting like a beacon. "This is my daughter's life," she said, her voice low, unyielding, a warning to Lynn. The attendant's hand twitched, her face a mask of rigid certainty, as if Nia's words were a challenge to her authority. A new figure emerged from the shadows. LaToya Harris, a nurse in row 4, her dark braids swinging as she stood, her eyes flashing with concern. "That's medical equipment," LaToya said, her voice calm but firm, addressing Lynn. "You need to see her papers." Lynn's gaze flicked to LaToya, her lips curling slightly, dismissing the intervention. "This is my cabin," Lynn said, her tone final, as if her word were law. Nia's pulse raced, her mind calculating. She's escalating this. She held up her phone, the trial documents glowing, but Lynn's hand shot out, hovering over the case. "Hand it over now," Lynn demanded, her voice a blade, cutting through Nia's resolve. Amara whimpered, her tremors worsening, and Nia's heart shattered. "Not my baby," she thought, her defiance blazing fiercer, a storm ready to break against Lynn's unyielding wall. The overhead lights flickered, casting stark shadows across the cabin, as if mirroring the clash unfolding. Nia's watch beeped, 12 minutes until Amara's dose. Her fingers tightened on the case, her body a shield between Lynn and her daughter. "You don't understand," Nia said, her voice rising, sharp with desperation. "This isn't just medicine. It's a $50 million trial." Lynn's eyes widened, a flicker of doubt crossing her face, but her posture remained rigid. "Rules don't bend," she snapped, stepping closer, her hand poised to seize the syringe. Greg muttered, "This is ridiculous," his voice fueling the cabin's unrest. Malik's live stream surged, comments flooding. "Save that kid! This is wrong!" Nia felt the storm breaking, her resolve unyielding despite the odds. She stood, her eyes locked on Lynn's, her voice a low growl. "You touch this, you're touching her life." The cabin held its breath, the reckoning poised to erupt. The cabin of Transglobal Flight 892 pulsed with a suffocating tension, its low hum a relentless drumbeat against Nia Adebayo's racing heart. She stood in row 2, her fingers locked around the silver thermal case, the Neurovita 9 syringe glinting inside like a fragile beacon of hope. Her daughter Amara, curled against the window, clutched her sketch pad, her trembling hands smudging Starfire's fiery wings. Nia's eyes, fierce with unyielding resolve, met Lynn Carver's icy glare, the flight attendant's rigid posture a wall of authority. "You touch this. You're touching her life," Nia had warned, her voice a low growl. But Lynn's hand shot forward, snatching the case with a swift, practiced motion. The cabin gasped, a collective breath stolen as Nia lunged, her cries sharp and desperate. "No, that's my daughter's life!" Amara whimpered, her tremors worsening, her wide eyes reflecting the storm now breaking. Nia's heart shattered, yet her defiance blazed, a fire against Lynn's cold control. Lynn strode to the galley, her heels clicking like a metronome of doom, the thermal case dangling from her grip. Nia's mind screamed, "She can't do this!" Her body moved instinctively, unbuckling her seatbelt, but Lynn's voice cut through. "Stay seated, ma'am, or I'll call security." The threat landed like a blow, yet Nia stood taller, her eyes blazing. "You don't understand. It's a $50 million trial," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. Lynn paused, her fingers hovering over the galley's biohazard bin, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. But her rigid certainty returned, her lips curling as she snapped, "Rules don't bend for anyone." With a flick of her wrist, she dropped the syringe into the bin, the plastic crunching with a sickening snap. Nia's scream echoed, raw and unyielding, as Amara's pencil fell, her small body shaking violently. The cabin's air turned electric, a reckoning unleashed. Malik Jones in seat 1B angled his phone, his live stream capturing every second of the escalating clash. His followers' comments exploded. "She threw it away? Save that kid!" Malik's dark eyes narrowed, his fingers typing furiously. "This is wrong." He felt the weight of the moment, his instincts screaming that this was more than a dispute. It was a viral firestorm. Across the aisle, Greg Tanner leaned forward, his smug voice piercing the silence. "This is what happens when people don't follow protocol." His words, laced with disdain, fueled Nia's fury, her mind flashing to years of fighting systems that dismissed her. "He's wrong," she thought, her gaze locked on Amara, whose tremors were now visible, her sketch pad slipping to the floor. Nia knelt beside her, whispering, "Hold on, baby. Starfire's fighting." Her resolve hardened, a fierce shield against the storm of judgment and betrayal. LaToya Harris, the nurse in row 4, rose from her seat, her dark braids swinging as she moved toward Nia. "That was a medical device," she said, her voice calm but sharp, facing Lynn. "You need to stop this now." Lynn's eyes flicked to LaToya, her expression a mask of cold authority. "This is my cabin, and I'm handling it," she retorted, her tone final, as if LaToya's words were a nuisance. Nia's pulse raced, her mind calculating. "She's doubling down." She pulled out her phone, the trial documents glowing, and held it up. "This proves it's legal," Nia said, her voice rising, unyielding. Lynn's hand twitched, her face hardening as she stepped closer to the bin. "Documentation doesn't change rules," she snapped, her voice a blade slicing through Nia's hope. Amara's whimpers grew louder, her small frame convulsing, and Nia's heart twisted, her defiance surging against the crushing weight of Lynn's act. The cabin's overhead lights flickered, casting stark shadows that mirrored the chaos unfolding. Passengers craned their necks, their whispers a rising tide of unease. "What's happening?" one muttered, while another hissed, "She shouldn't have brought that on board." Nia felt their stares, a suffocating pressure, but her focus remained on Amara, whose eyes were glassy with fear. "Mama, it hurts," Amara whispered, her voice breaking Nia's soul. Nia's fingers trembled as she stroked her daughter's braids, her mind screaming, "I can't lose her." She stood again, facing Lynn, her voice a fierce growl. "You just threw away her life. Fix this now." Lynn's face paled, but her posture remained rigid, her hands clasped tightly. "You're causing a disturbance," she said, her voice low, accusing. Malik's live stream surged, comments flooding. "This is insane. Get that kid help!" The cabin was a powder keg, ready to explode. Greg's voice cut through again. Louder now. This is why we have rule, he said, his tone smug, as if Nia's pain were a lesson to be taught. Nia's chest burned, her defiance flaring against his judgment. He doesn't see her, she thought, her eyes locked on Amara's shaking form. Latoya stepped closer, her voice urgent. She needs that medication now. You're risking her life. Lynn's eyes darted between Nia and Latoya, a crack in her armor. But she doubled down. I'm protecting this flight, she said, her voice trembling with forced certainty. Nia's watch beeped, 10 minutes until Amara's dose. Her heart pounded, each tick a hammer against her resolve. She leaned toward Lynn, her voice a fierce whisper. You're not protecting anyone. You're endangering my child. The cabin's air crackled, the storm breaking as passengers shifted, their murmurs growing louder, the reckoning now unstoppable. Malik's phone stayed trained on the scene, his followers' outrage fueling the viral storm. This mom's fighting for her kid, he typed, his heart racing as the comments hit 1 million views. Nia felt the cabin closing in, the weight of Lynn's authority, Greg's scorn, and the passengers' whispers pressing against her. But her resolve was a fire, unyielding, burning through the chaos. She knelt beside Amara, her voice soft but fierce. Starfire's got you, baby. I've got you. Amara's eyes fluttered, her tremors intensifying, and Nia's soul screamed. She stood facing Lynn, her voice a thunderclap. You will not take her from me. Lynn's hand froze, her face a mask of doubt, but the damage was done. The cabin's lights flickered again, the hum of the engines a prelude to a clash that would shake the skies. Nia's defiance stood tall, a beacon against the storm, her faith in her daughter's survival unshakable. The cabin of Transglobal Flight 892 crackled with a raw electric tension, its air thick as if charged with an impending storm. Nia Adebayo knelt beside her daughter Amara, her heart pounding like a war drum, her fingers brushing Amara's trembling braids. The crushed Neurovita 9 syringe, a $50 million lifeline, lay destroyed in the galley's biohazard bin, its plastic shards a cruel mockery of her hope. Amara's sketchpad lay abandoned, Starfire's fiery wings smudged, as her small body convulsed with worsening tremors. Nia's eyes, fierce with unyielding resolve, burned into Lynn Carver, who stood rigid in the galley, her blonde bun gleaming under the flickering cabin lights. You will not take her from me, Nia had declared, her voice a thunderclap, but Lynn's icy glare held firm, her posture unyielding. The cabin's hum pulsed, a relentless countdown, as passengers turned, their whispers swelling into a tide of unrest. Nia's defiance surged, a fire against the crushing weight of Lynn's act. Greg Tanner's voice sliced through the chaos, his smug tone ringing from row 3. This is why we have rules. People like her cause trouble, he said, his cufflinks glinting as he leaned forward, his eyes narrowing at Nia. The words hit like a whip, but Nia's jaw clenched, her mind raging. He sees a problem, not a mother. She stroked Amara's hand, her touch steady despite the storm within. Hang on, baby, she whispered, her voice soft but fierce, as Amara's glassy eyes flickered with fear. Malik Jones, in seat 1B, angled his phone, his live stream exploding with comments. This is outrageous. Save that kid! His dark eyes locked on Nia, typing, She's fighting for her daughter's life. The cabin split, some passengers nodding at Greg's words, others murmuring support for Nia, their faces shadowed with unease. Nia felt the divide, a chasm of judgment and empathy, but her focus remained on Amara, her beacon in the chaos. Latoya Harris, the nurse from row 4, pushed forward, her dark braids swinging, her voice cutting through the cabin's din. You're risking a child's life, she said to Lynn, her tone sharp but controlled, her eyes flashing with urgency. Lynn's face tightened, her hands clasped as if to anchor her authority. This is about safety, not your opinions, she snapped, her voice cold, dismissing Latoya's plea. Nia's pulse hammered, her mind racing. She's blind to the truth. She stood, her body a shield over Amara, and held up her phone, the trial documents glowing like a weapon. This is legal, life-saving, Nia said, her voice rising, unyielding, but Lynn's eyes narrowed, her posture rigid. You're causing a scene. Lynn retorted, stepping closer, her shadow looming. Amara's tremors intensified, her small frame jerking, and Nia's heart shattered, her defiance blazing against the attendant's heartless control. The cabin's overhead lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the rows, as if the plane itself recoiled from the clash. Passengers shifted, their murmurs growing louder, a mix of annoyance and concern. "She shouldn't have brought that on board," one hissed, while another whispered, "That poor kid." Nia felt their stares, a suffocating weight, but her resolve held firm. They don't see her, she thought, her eyes locked on Amara's trembling form. She knelt again, her voice a fierce whisper. "Starfire's fighting, baby. So are we." Malik's livestream surged, hitting 2 million views, comments flooding. "This is a scandal. Get her help." Greg leaned back, his voice louder. "We're all delayed because of her." His words fueled the cabin's divide, some nodding, others glaring at him. Nia's chest burned, her defiance afire against the rising tide of judgment, her faith in Amara's survival unshakable. Latoya moved closer, her hand resting on Nia's shoulder, her voice urgent. "Her seizures are getting worse. You need to act now," she said to Lynn, her tone a plea wrapped in steel. Lynn's face paled, a crack in her armor, but she doubled down. "I'm following protocol," she said, her voice trembling with forced certainty, her hands gripping the galley counter. Nia's watch beeped, 8 minutes until Amara's dose. Her heart pounded, each tick a dagger, as she stood, facing Lynn. "You threw away her life," Nia said, her voice a low, fierce growl, her eyes blazing with unyielding resolve. Lynn's hand twitched, her face a mask of doubt, but she stepped toward the intercom, her voice sharp. "This passenger is disruptive." The cabin gasped, passengers leaning forward, their whispers a storm of dissent. Nia's defiance surged, a beacon against the chaos, her strength rooted in her daughter's fragile hope. Malik's phone stayed trained on Nia, his followers' outrage amplifying the tension. "This mom's a hero," he typed, his heart racing as comments exploded. "Justice for Amara. Fire that attendant." Nia felt the cabin's eyes a crushing pressure, but her focus remained on Amara, whose convulsions grew violent, her small hands clutching the seat. "Mama, I'm scared," Amara whispered, her voice breaking Nia's soul. Nia's fingers trembled as she stroked her daughter's face, her mind screaming, "I won't lose you." She stood again, her voice a thunderclap. "You're killing her. Do something." Lynn's face froze, her hands shaking, but her posture held rigid, her authority crumbling under Nia's fierce stand. Greg muttered, "This is out of control." His tone was smug, fueling the cabin's unrest. The lights flickered again, the plane's hum a prelude to a reckoning, as Nia's unyielding faith stood tall, a fire against the storm. The cabin was a battleground now, its air thick with division and dread. Passengers split into factions, some siding with Greg's call for order, others whispering support for Nia's fight. Latoya knelt beside Amara, checking her pulse, her voice urgent. "She needs help now." Nia's heart raced, her mind calculating. "Time's running out." She faced Lynn, her voice a fierce cry. "You don't get to decide her fate." Lynn's eyes darted to the intercom, her fingers hovering, but a flicker of fear crossed her face. Malik's livestream comments surged. "This is a crime! Save Amara!" Nia felt the cabin closing in, the weight of judgment and hope colliding, but her resolve burned brighter. She clutched Amara's hand, her voice soft but unyielding. "We're stronger than this, baby." The cabin's tension was a live wire, ready to spark, as Nia's defiance stood as a beacon, her faith in justice and her daughter's life unshakable. The cabin of Transglobal Flight 892 was a cauldron of chaos, its air thick with the electric hum of a storm about to break. Nia Adebayo stood in row 2, her body a defiant shield over her daughter Amara, whose small frame convulsed violently, her sketchpad abandoned on the floor. The crushed Neurovita 9 syringe, a $50 million lifeline, lay shattered in the galley's biohazard bin, its loss a dagger in Nia's heart. Her eyes blazing with unyielding fire locked on Lynn Carver, whose rigid posture and cold glare stood like a fortress of authority. "You're killing her! Do something!" Nia had cried, her voice a thunderclap. But Lynn's face remained a mask, her hands trembling yet resolute. Amara's whimpers pierced the cabin's din, each tremor a cruel tick of the clock. Nia's watch beeped. 7 minutes until the dose. Her resolve surged, a fierce beacon against the suffocating weight of Lynn's heartless act, as the cabin's eyes bore down. Lynn stood by the galley, her blonde bun glinting under flickering lights, her voice slicing through the unrest. "You're disrupting this flight," she said, her tone sharp, accusing, as if Nia's pain were a crime. Nia's chest burned, her mind screaming, "She's blind to my daughter's life." She knelt beside Amara, stroking her trembling braids, and whispered, "Starfire's fighting, baby. So am I." Amara's glassy eyes flickered, her small hand clutching Nia's, as convulsions racked her fragile body. Nia's heart shattered, yet her defiance flared, a storm against Lynn's icy control. Greg Tanner's voice cut through, smug and biting. "This is what happens when rules are ignored." His words, dripping with disdain, fueled the cabin's divide, some passengers nodding, others whispering support for Nia. She ignored Greg, her focus on Amara, her mind racing. "I won't let them break us." The cabin's tension was a live wire, ready to spark. Malik Jones, in seat 1B, kept his phone trained on Nia, his live stream hitting 3 million views, comments exploding. "Justice for Amara! This is a crime!" His dark eyes burned with purpose, typing, "This mom's a warrior." He felt the weight of the moment, a viral reckoning unfolding. Latoya Harris, the nurse from row 4, knelt beside Amara, her fingers checking her pulse, her voice urgent. "Her seizures are critical. She needs help now." Lynn's eyes darted to Latoya, her lips curling. "I'm handling this," she snapped, her voice trembling, her authority cracking under Nia's unyielding stand. Nia stood, her phone glowing with trial documents, and faced Lynn, her voice a fierce growl. "You threw away her life. You fix this." Lynn's hand twitched, her face paling, but she clung to her rules, her posture rigid, as if defiance were a personal affront. The cabin's lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the rows. The plane's hum a relentless pulse against Nia's racing heart. Passengers shifted, their murmurs a rising tide of dissent. Some siding with Greg's call for order, others whispering, "That poor kid." Nia felt their stares, a crushing pressure, but her resolve was afire, unyielding against the chaos. "They don't see her," she thought, her eyes locked on Amara's convulsing form. She stood taller, her voice rising. "This isn't about your rules. It's about her life." Lynn's face froze, a flicker of doubt in her eyes, but she stepped toward the intercom, her voice sharp. "I'm calling the purser." Nia's heart pounded, her mind calculating. "She's escalating, but I'm not backing down." Malik's livestream comments surged. "This is wrong. Save her." The cabin was a battleground, its air thick with the storm's breaking point. James Torres, the purser, emerged from the forward galley, his dark suit crisp, his face a mask of professional calm. "What's the issue here?" he asked, his tone measured, his eyes darting between Nia and Lynn. Nia's pulse hammered, her mind screaming, "He's my chance." She faced him, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Your attendant destroyed my daughter's $50 million medication. She's seizing. She could die." James's eyes widened, his calm cracking, as he glanced at Amara's trembling form. Lynn interjected, her voice defensive. "It was an unmarked syringe, against FAA rules." Nia's defiance flared, her eyes blazing. "Check my documents, it's legal," she said, thrusting her phone forward. James hesitated, his hand hovering over his radio, his mind weighing the stakes. The cabin's unrest grew, passengers leaning forward, their whispers a storm of judgment and empathy, as Nia's unyielding faith held firm. Nia's watch beeped. 5 minutes until Amara's dose. Her heart raced, each tick a dagger, as she knelt beside Amara, her voice soft but fierce. "Hold on, baby. Mama's fighting." Amara's convulsions intensified, her small frame jerking, her eyes fluttering with fear. Nia's soul screamed, but her resolve burned brighter, a beacon against the crushing odds. She stood facing James, her voice a thunderclap that silenced the cabin. My daughter Amara Adebayo is in the Synaptech Neurovita 9 trial, worth $50 million. Your attendant destroyed her dose, endangering her life and a global breakthrough. The words landed like a bomb, James's face paling, his hand gripping the radio. Lynn's posture faltered, her eyes wide with doubt as the cabin gasped, the weight of Nia's declaration sinking in. Malik's live stream exploded, comments flooding. This is huge. Justice for Amara. The cabin's air crackled, a reckoning unleashed. James keyed his radio, his voice urgent. Captain, we have a medical emergency and a major issue. In the cockpit, Captain Laura Bennett, a veteran pilot with steely calm, listened, her eyes narrowing at the words, $50 million trial. Get me details, she said, her voice clipped as she adjusted the controls. Nia felt the cabin's eyes, a suffocating weight, but her defiance stood tall, her faith in Amara's survival unshakable. They can't ignore this, she thought, her gaze locked on James, who nodded, his face grim. Stay calm, ma'am, he said, but Nia's voice cut through. Calm won't save her. Lynn stood frozen, her hands shaking, her authority crumbling under Nia's fierce stand. The plane's hum grew louder, a prelude to a seismic shift, as Nia's declaration set the stage for a battle that would shake the skies. The cabin of Transglobal Flight 892 shuddered as the plane banked sharply, its engines roaring with urgent fury, a stark contrast to the suffocating silence that followed Nia Adebayo's thunderous declaration. Nia knelt beside her daughter Amara, whose small body convulsed violently in seat 2A, her sketchpad abandoned. Starfire's smudged wings of fading hope. The destroyed Neurovita 9 syringe, a $50 million lifeline, lay crushed in the galley's biohazard bin, its loss a searing wound in Nia's heart. Her eyes, blazing with unyielding defiance, locked on the purser, James Torres, whose face paled as he gripped his radio, relaying her words. $50 million trial, endangered life. Amara's tremors intensified, her glassy eyes fluttering, her whimpers piercing Nia's soul. Hold on, baby, Nia whispered, her voice fierce yet tender, as she stroked Amara's braids, her resolve afire against the storm. The cabin's flickering lights cast jagged shadows, the air thick with a reckoning poised to erupt. James's voice crackled over the intercom, urgent and strained. Ladies and gentlemen, remain seated. We're making an emergency landing in Denver. The cabin erupted in gasps, passengers shifting, their whispers a rising tide of alarm. Nia's heart pounded, each beat a hammer, as she clung to Amara, her mind racing. We're running out of time. Lynn Carver stood frozen in the galley, her blonde bun askew, her hands trembling, her rigid authority crumbling under the weight of Nia's words. You did this, Nia said, her voice low, unyielding, her eyes boring into Lynn's. Lynn's face twitched, a flicker of guilt breaking through her mask, but she turned away, her posture stiff, as if shielding herself from the storm she'd unleashed. Greg Tanner in row 3 muttered, This is absurd. Delaying us all for her, his smug tone fueling the cabin's unrest. Nia ignored him, her focus on Amara, her faith unshakable. Malik Jones in seat 1B kept his phone steady, his live stream now at 5 million views, comments flooding. Justice for Amara. This is a scandal. His dark eyes burned with purpose, typing, This mom's fighting a war. He felt the moment's weight, a viral firestorm igniting, as passengers craned their necks, some glaring at Nia, others whispering support. LaToya Harris, the nurse from row 4, knelt beside Amara, her fingers pressing against her wrist, her voice urgent. Her pulse is erratic. She needs a hospital now. Nia's chest tightened, her mind screaming, They can't let her die. She looked at LaToya, her eyes pleading yet fierce. Stay with her. LaToya nodded, her braids swinging, her calm a lifeline in the chaos. The plane tilted, its descent steep, the cabin's air crackling with dread, as Nia's defiance stood tall against the storm. The plane's engines roared louder, the cabin shaking as it plummeted toward Denver. the oval windows revealing a gray dawn streaked with flashing lights below. Nia's watch beeped. 3 minutes past Amara's dose time. Her heart shattered, each convulsion wrenching her soul as she whispered, "Starfire's got you, baby." Amara's small hand clutched hers, her tremors violent, her breathing shallow. Nia's mind raced. Synaptech has to come through. She glanced at James, who stood by the galley, radio crackling with Captain Laura Bennett's voice. "Paramedics are ready at the gate." Nia's resolve surged, a fierce fire against the crushing odds. Lynn hovered nearby, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes avoiding Nia's. "You can't hide from this," Nia said, her voice a blade, cutting through Lynn's silence. The cabin's unrest grew, passengers murmuring, "What's happening? Is the kid okay?" The storm was breaking, a reckoning in motion. The plane hit the runway with a jolt, tires screeching, reverse thrusters roaring like a beast unleashed. Nia held Amara close, her body a shield, her mind screaming, "We made it this far." The cabin door hissed open and paramedics rushed in, their red jackets stark against the dim interior, their gurney clattering down the aisle. "We've got her," one said, his voice calm but urgent, as they lifted Amara, her small frame limp, her eyes half closed. Nia followed, her backpack slung over her shoulder, her trial documents clutched like a weapon. "Stay with me, baby," she said, her voice fierce, unyielding, as she ran beside the gurney. Latoya followed, her voice steady. "I'll brief them. She's in the Synaptech trial." Nia's heart pounded, her faith a beacon, as the paramedics wheeled Amara toward the flashing ambulances waiting on the tarmac. Malik's live stream captured the chaos, his comments exploding. "They're saving her!" "Justice for Amara," he typed. "This is history unfolding." His eyes locked on Nia's fierce resolve. Passengers watched, some praying, others grumbling about delays. Greg's voice rising. "This better not mess up my connection." Nia ignored him, her focus on Amara, her mind racing. "Synaptech's dose is coming." James approached Lynn, his voice low. "Stay here. You're not done answering for this." Lynn's face crumpled, her hands shaking, her authority shattered. She stood alone, the galley's cold steel a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Nia glanced back, her eyes meeting Lynn's for a fleeting moment, her gaze blazing with unyielding strength. The tarmac loomed, ambulances flashing, a new battleground where Nia's faith would face its ultimate test. The Denver tarmac was a blur of red and blue lights, the ambulances' sirens wailing, their urgency a stark echo of Nia's racing heart. She ran beside Amara's gurney, her hand clutching her daughter's, her voice a fierce whisper. "We're here, baby. You're strong." The paramedics moved swiftly, their radios crackling with hospital updates as Nia's mind churned. They have to save her. A Synaptech courier, alerted by Malik's livestream, waited with a replacement Neurovita 9 dose, its vial glinting in a cooler. Nia's eyes widened, a spark of hope igniting. But her resolve remained fierce, unyielding against the chaos. The cabin behind her buzzed with unrest, passengers deplaning, their murmurs a mix of awe and annoyance. Malik followed, his phone still recording, his voice low. "This mom's unstoppable." Nia's faith burned, a fire against the storm as she stepped into the ambulance, ready to fight for Amara's life. The sterile glow of Denver's hospital emergency room burned Nia Adebayo's eyes, its antiseptic stench a sharp contrast to the chaos of Transglobal Flight 892. She sat beside Amara's bed, her daughter's small frame still, her tremors finally easing as the Neurovita 9 replacement dose dripped through an IV, its clear liquid a fragile lifeline. Nia's heart pounded, her fingers clutching Amara's hand, her mind racing. She's fighting, but we're not safe yet. The hospital's hum, beeping monitors, hurried footsteps, mirrored the storm still raging within her. Amara's sketchpad lay on the bedside table, Starfire's smudged wings a testament to their battle. Nia's eyes, fierce with unyielding resolve, scanned the room, its white walls and steel equipment a cold fortress. She whispered, "You're stronger than this, baby." her voice tender yet defiant, a beacon against the crushing weight of the crisis. The door swung open, and a new figure entered, her presence shifting the air. Cassandra Wright, a sharp-eyed lawyer in a tailored suit, strode in, her heels clicking with purpose. "Mrs. Adebayo, I'm with Synaptech," she said, her voice calm but steely, her clipboard glinting under the fluorescent lights. Nia's pulse quickened, her mind calculating. They're here to protect their trial. She nodded, her gaze steady, and said, "My daughter's stable, but we need answers." Cassandra's eyes softened, but her tone hardened. "What happened on that flight was unacceptable. We're pursuing action." Nia's heart surged, a spark of hope igniting, though her defiance remained fierce. "They almost killed her," she said, her voice low, unyielding. Outside, the hospital's windows revealed a gray dawn, ambulances flashing, a stark reminder of the battle fought at 35,000 feet. Nia's resolve burned, her faith in Amara's survival afire against the storm of uncertainty. Back at the airport, the administrative office was a sterile cage, its gray walls closing in on Lynn Carver. She stood alone, her blonde bun fraying, her hands trembling as she faced James Torres and a stern woman in a navy suit, TransGlobal's crisis manager, Ellen Reed. "Ms. Carver, explain your actions," Ellen said, her voice cold, her pen poised over a notepad. Lynn's chest tightened, her mind reeling. "I followed protocol." Her voice shook as she said, "It was an unmarked syringe, a security risk." James's eyes narrowed, his tone sharp. "You were told it was medication." Lynn's face paled, her rigid authority crumbling, as she stammered, "I was protecting the flight." Ellen's pen stopped, her voice cutting. "You endangered a child in a $50 million trial." Lynn's heart sank, a reckoning dawning as the room's fluorescent lights buzzed, casting harsh shadows on her unraveling world. Malik Jones sat in the airport terminal, his phone glowing with his live stream, now at 7 million views, comments flooding. "Justice for Amara! Fire her!" His dark eyes burned with purpose, typing, "This mom's courage is unstoppable." He watched passengers deplaning, their faces a mix of awe and annoyance, some whispering about Amara, others grumbling about delays. Greg Tanner, dragging his suitcase, muttered to a companion, "This whole mess was avoidable," his smug tone grating. Malik's jaw clenched, his mind racing. "He doesn't get it." He posted, "Nia's fighting for her kid, not your schedule." The terminal's glass walls reflected flashing lights outside, a chaotic echo of the storm Nia had ignited. Malik's livestream was a megaphone, amplifying Nia's defiance as the world began to take notice, a viral firestorm spreading. In the hospital, Nia's eyes locked on Cassandra, her voice a fierce growl. "That attendant needs to answer for this." Cassandra nodded, her clipboard snapping shut. "Synaptech's filing a $10 million suit against her. Gross negligence," she said, her tone sharp, unyielding. Nia's heart leaped, but her mind churned. "Justice isn't enough. Amara needs to live." She glanced at Amara, whose breathing steadied, her small chest rising slowly. Latoya Harris entered, her braids swinging, her voice calm. "Her vitals are improving, but she's not out of danger." Nia's resolve hardened, her fingers tightening on Amara's hand. "We're not done fighting," she said, her voice a beacon, her faith unshakable. The hospital's monitors beeped, a steady rhythm against the storm, as Nia's defiance stood tall, a fire against the crushing odds. At the airport, Lynn sat in the office, her hands clasped, her face a mask of dread. Ellen's voice was a blade. "You're suspended, effective immediately." Lynn's heart plummeted, her mind screaming, "This can't be happening." She saw her career, decades of rigid control, collapsing, the room's gray walls closing in like a tomb. "I followed rules," she whispered, her voice breaking, but Ellen's eyes were cold. "Rules don't justify endangering a child." James stood by, his face grim, as he added, "The captain's filing a report." Lynn's hands shook, her eyes darting to the window, where ambulances flashed, a stark reminder of her actions. The office's air was heavy, a reckoning unfolding, as Lynn's world shattered under the weight of her own choices, her rigid certainty now a crumbling ruin. The hospital room's sterile glow softened as Amara's tremors faded, her small hand warm in Nia's grip. Nia's eyes, fierce with purpose, scanned the room, its monitors and IV lines a lifeline in the storm. She whispered, "Starfire's still fighting, baby," her voice tender, unyielding, as she stroked Amara's braids. Cassandra stood by, her voice low. "We've contacted UCLA. They're monitoring her trial data." Nia nodded, her mind racing. "They're with us, but it's not over." Outside, the dawn broke, its gray light filtering through the windows, a fragile hope against the chaos. Malik's livestream comments surged. "Nia's a hero. Justice for Amara." Nia felt the world's eyes, a weight she carried with defiance. Her faith in Amara's survival, a fire that burned brighter. The hospital's hum was a prelude to the next battle, as Nia's resolve stood unshakable, ready to face whatever came next. The fluorescent lights of the pit stop convenience store buzzed like a swarm of angry wasps, casting a harsh glow over Lynn Carver's hunched shoulders. A year after the catastrophe on Trans-Global Flight 892, she stood behind the counter, her blonde bun long gone, her hair limp and graying, her eyes hollow with defeat. The store's stale air, thick with the scent of burnt coffee and cheap hot dogs, clung to her like a shroud. Her hands, once steady with authority, trembled as she scanned a customer's soda, her mind replaying the moment she crushed Amara Adebayo's Neurovita 9 syringe, a $50 million lifeline. "I was right," she whispered to herself, but the words felt hollow, a crumbling defense against the storm of her ruin. The world had turned on her, her career shattered, her savings drained by Synaptech's $10 million lawsuit. The counter's scratched surface mirrored her fractured life. As the night stretched on, a relentless reckoning. In Denver's hospital, Nia Adebayo sat beside Amara's bed, the room's sterile glow softened by dawn's faint light filtering through the blinds. Amara's small chest rose steadily, her tremors gone, the Neurovita 9 replacement dose working its fragile magic. Nia's eyes, fierce with unyielding resolve, traced her daughter's peaceful face, her heart swelling with hope, yet heavy with the battle's scars. "You're my warrior, baby," she whispered, her voice tender but defiant as she clutched Amara's sketchpad. Starfire's vibrant wings a beacon of their triumph. Her mind churned. "We survived, but the fight isn't over." The hospital's hum, beeping monitors, distant footsteps, felt like a pulse, urging her forward. Cassandra Wright, Synaptech's lawyer, stood by the door, her tailored suit crisp, her voice steely. "Lynn Carver's facing consequences. She's done." Nia nodded, her defiance blazing, her faith in Amara's future afire against the storm of their ordeal. At the pit stop, Lynn's hands froze mid-scan as a news alert flashed on her phone. Its screen cracked like her world. "Flight attendant sued for $10 million in viral scandal," the headline screamed, her face plastered across it, eyes wide with the rigid certainty now shattered. Her heart sank, her mind screaming, "They're destroying me." She saw Malik Jones's live stream replay, Nia's fierce stand and Amara's trembling form, each frame a dagger in her soul. The store's lone customer, a tired trucker, glanced at her, his eyes narrowing with recognition. "You're that flight attendant," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. Lynn's face burned, her voice barely a whisper. "It was a mistake." The trucker snorted, leaving with his soda, the door's chime a mocking echo. The store's fluorescent lights flickered, casting shadows that swallowed her, as her reckoning deepened, unrelenting. Malik Jones sat in a Denver cafe, his phone glowing with his live stream, now at 10 million views. Comments flooding. "Who are justice for Amara? Nia's a hero." His dark eyes burned with purpose, typing, "This story's changing lives." He saw Nia's strength in every frame, her defiance a viral firestorm that had toppled Lynn's world. A barista overhearing his conversation said, "That mom's incredible. She didn't back down." Malik nodded, his mind racing. "She's more than a mom. She's a movement." The cafe's warm lights contrasted with the cold reality of Lynn's fall, its chatter a distant hum against the storm Nia had ignited. Malik posted, "Mara's recovering, but the fight's just begun." His followers amplified Nia's cause. The cafe's windows reflected the city's dawn, a new day dawning, as Nia's resolve inspired a reckoning far beyond the skies. In the hospital, Nia's fingers traced Amara's sketchpad, her heart steady despite the weight of their journey. Cassandra's voice cut through. Lynn's negligence was unprecedented. Our lawsuit's airtight. Nia's eyes narrowed, her mind calculating. She'll pay, but Amara's life is my focus. She looked at Amara, whose small hand twitched, a faint smile breaking through. Starfire's back, Mama, Amara whispered, her voice weak but alive. Nia's heart soared, her defiance surging, a fire against the chaos. Latoya Harris entered, her braids swinging, her voice calm. Her vitals are strong. She's a fighter. Nia nodded, her resolve unyielding, and said, So are we. The hospital's sterile walls felt less cold. The monitor's beeps a rhythm of hope. Nia's faith burned, a beacon against the storm, as she prepared for the battles ahead, her strength rooted in her daughter's survival. Back at the pit stop, Lynn's hand shook as she locked the register. The store's silence a crushing weight. A new customer entered, his face familiar, his blazer sharp, Malik Jones, the live streamer from Flight 892. Lynn's breath caught, her mind reeling. He knows me. Malik grabbed a pack of gum, his eyes meeting hers, a flicker of pity crossing his face. Find everything okay? Lynn croaked, her voice a shadow of her former authority. Malik nodded, his gaze heavy, and said, You're her, aren't you? Lynn's face burned, her heart crumbling as she whispered, It was protocol. Malik's eyes softened, but he left without a word. The door's chime a final blow. The store's lights buzzed, casting Lynn in a harsh glow, her world shattered, a ghost in the ruins of her own making, as the storm of her actions consumed her. Nia stood by Amara's bed, her eyes scanning the hospital room, its IV lines and monitors a lifeline in the storm. She thought of Lynn, her rigid certainty now dust, and felt a flicker of pity, quickly replaced by fierce resolve. We're stronger than her mistakes, she thought, her hand clutching Amara's. Cassandra's voice broke through. The media's all over this. Lynn's done. Nia's jaw clenched, her mind steady. Justice is coming, but Amara's my fight. The hospital's dawn light filtered through, casting soft shadows, a fragile hope against the chaos. Malik's livestream comments surged. Nia's unstoppable. Justice for Amara! Nia felt the world's eyes, a weight she carried with defiance, her faith in Amara's survival, a fire that burned unyieldingly. The hospital's hum was a call to keep fighting, as Nia's resolve stood tall, ready for the final reckoning. The Los Angeles Convention Center buzzed with vibrant energy, its halls alive with colorful booths and chattering crowds, a stark contrast to the sterile chaos of Trans-Global Flight 892. Nia Adebayo stood at a podium, her eyes fierce with unyielding resolve, her dark braids gleaming under the spotlight. Beside her, Amara, now a radiant 9-year-old, held up her comic book, Starfire Saves the Day, its cover blazing with a hero's fiery wings. The crowd roared, their applause a thunderous wave, as Nia's voice rang out. This is for every family fighting for hope. Her heart swelled, her mind flashing to the hospital room where Amara's tremors had faded, the Neurovita 9 dose of fragile victory. The convention's air, thick with the scent of ink and excitement, felt like a new dawn. Nia's defiance, forged in the storm of that fateful flight, now fueled a movement, her faith in Amara's survival, a beacon against all odds. Amara's smile lit the stage, her small hands steady as she signed comics, her once trembling fingers now strong. Nia's eyes traced her daughter's face, her heart pounding with pride, yet heavy with the scars of their battle. We made it, baby, she whispered, her voice tender but defiant, as she handed Amara a pen. The booth's table was stacked with comics, their covers a vibrant testament to their triumph. Malik Jones, now a partner in their cause, stood nearby, his phone glowing with a live stream, its comments flooding. Justice for Amara. Nia's unstoppable. His dark eyes sparkled, typing, This mom's changing the world. The crowd's energy surged, their cheers a wave of support as Nia's mind churned. This is bigger than us. The convention's lights cast a warm glow, a stark contrast to the cold cabin where her fight began, her resolve unyielding against the storm's memory. In a small town far from Los Angeles, the pit stop convenience store's fluorescent lights buzzed, casting a harsh glare over Lynn Carver's slumped figure. Her graying hair hung limp, her hands trembling as she scanned a customer's chips. The store's stale air, a suffocating shroud. The world had turned on her career shattered by TransGlobal's suspension and Synaptech's $10 million lawsuit, its legal papers a weight crushing her soul. Her mind replayed the flight, Nia's fierce stand, and Amara's trembling form, each memory a dagger. "I followed rule," she whispered, her voice hollow, but the words crumbled against the truth. A newsstand by the counter displayed a headline, "Flight Attendant's Career Ruined in Viral Scandal." Lynn's heart sank, her eyes burning, as the store's silence mocked her, a relentless reckoning of her own making. Malik approached Nia at the convention, his blazer sharp, his voice warm. "You've started a revolution, Nia." She smiled, her eyes blazing with purpose, and said, "It's for Amara, and every kid like her." Malik nodded, his live stream now at 15 million views. Comments soaring, "Nia's a hero." "Amara's comic is fire," he posted, "The Zara Fund's changing lives," referring to the nonprofit Nia co-founded to support trial families. The convention's crowd swelled, their faces a mix of awe and inspiration, as Nia's mind raced. "We're building something real." A young fan handed Amara a drawing, mirroring Starfire, and Amara beamed, her voice bright. "Starfire saves everyone, like Mama." Nia's heart soared, her defiance a fire that burned brighter, the convention's energy a testament to their unyielding triumph over the storm. Lynn's hands froze as a new customer entered the pit stop, her breath catching when she saw a familiar face. Nia Adebayo, her presence a shockwave. Nia placed a copy of Starfire Saves the Day on the counter, a note tucked inside, her eyes steady but soft. "Find everything okay?" Lynn croaked, her voice trembling, her mind screaming, "Why is she here?" Nia's gaze held no anger, only a quiet strength, as she said, "This is for you." Lynn's heart pounded, her fingers shaking as she opened the note, its words piercing. "Rules matter, but humanity is everything." Her eyes welled, her soul crumbling, as she whispered, "I'm sorry." Nia nodded, her voice gentle. "Keep fighting." The store's lights flickered, casting Lynn in a stark glow as her reckoning met Nia's compassion, a moment that shattered her defenses. At the convention, Nia took the podium again, her voice a thunderclap. "We rise by lifting others." The crowd roared, their applause a wave of hope, as Amara stood beside her, holding her comic high. Nia's mind flashed to the flight, Lynn's rigid scorn, and Amara's trembling form, but her heart burned with triumph. "We're not just survivors," she said, her eyes blazing. "We're warriors." Malik's livestream captured every word, comments flooding. "Nia's a legend. Zara Fund." The convention's lights sparkled, the crowd's energy a beacon against the storm's memory. Nia's resolve stood unyielding, her faith in Amara's future a fire that lit the way. The hall's vibrant chaos faded, replaced by a vision of a plane streaking across the night sky, its trail a symbol of their victory, their compassion a final reckoning. Lynn sat alone in the pit stop, the comic book open on the counter, Starfire's fiery wings glowing under the fluorescent lights. Her hands trembled, her eyes tracing Nia's note, its words a mirror to her ruin. "I was wrong," she whispered, her voice breaking, as tears fell, each one a release from her rigid past. The store's silence was a weight, but Nia's compassion cracked it open, a faint light in her darkness. Her mind churned. "I can't undo it, but I can change." The door's chime echoed, a new customer entering, but Lynn's eyes stayed on the comic, its hero a reminder of the strength she'd failed to see. The night stretched on, its stillness a canvas for her redemption, as Nia's unyielding faith and Amara's triumph reshaped her shattered world. The night sky fades, but Nia and Amara's triumph shines on, a testament to unyielding faith and compassion. What did their story stir in you? Could one moment of courage change a life or a world? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share where you're watching from, and hit that like button if Nia's fight moved you. Subscribe to catch more stories of resilience that ignite the heart and ring the bell for our latest videos. Thank you for joining us on this sky-high journey. Your support fuels these tales of hope. Until next time, keep believing in the power of standing strong. See you soon.